Sarah sat quietly by the window, her hand resting gently on the arm of her husband, Michael. The autumn leaves outside, in their vibrant hues of orange, yellow, and red, swirled in the wind, a reminder that time was passing. It had been weeks since the doctors confirmed what they had feared most. Michael's illness was incurable. He had been battling it for months, and though they had hoped for a miracle, that hope had now faded. "I always loved this time of year," Michael said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was weaker than it had been, but his words were still full of warmth. The colors, the cool air. It feels like nature is saying goodbye. Sarah smiled, though tears brimmed in her eyes. She knew Michael was thinking of his own goodbye, but instead of dwelling on the sadness of it, they had made a pact. They would spend these final days together, making the most of the time they had left. They would not let the illness take away the beauty of their love, nor the joy of the moments they could still share. They had been married for nearly 30 years, and while their life together had its ups and downs, they had always found their way back to each other. They had built a life full of memories, some sweet, some bittersweet, but every one of them was precious. Now, in these last days, they would revisit those memories and create a few more, even if they were the last. "Do you remember our first date?" Sarah asked, her voice catching slightly. She wanted to remember the beginning, not the end. Michael chuckled, a soft, raspy sound. "How could I forget? I was so nervous. I spilled my coffee all over myself. I thought for sure you'd never agree to a second date." "I thought it was charming," Sarah replied, smiling at the memory. "You were trying so hard to impress me, and all I could think was how genuine you were. I knew even then that you were different." They spent the afternoon reminiscing, sharing stories from their years together. Stories of their children growing up, of their travels, of the countless small moments that had made their life rich and full. They laughed about the mishaps they had experienced along the way, and they cried about the losses and the challenges that had tested them. But through it all, there was an unspoken understanding between them. Love had been the constant. It had carried them through the hardest of times, and it would carry them through this final chapter as well. As the days went on, Michael's condition worsened. He became weaker, his body betraying him in ways that were painful to witness. Sarah cared for him tenderly, never letting him feel like a burden. She bathed him, fed him, and sat with him late into the night when sleep wouldn't come. They had long conversations during these quiet hours, talking about life, death, and the unknown that awaited them. "I'm scared," Michael admitted one evening, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah squeezed his hand. "I know," she said softly. "I'm scared too. But we're in this together, like we always have been." Michael looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for everything, for loving me the way you have. I couldn't have asked for a better partner." Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks as she nodded. "You've given me so much," she said. "Even in these final days, you're still teaching me about love and strength." Despite the pain and the sadness, there was also an overwhelming sense of peace between them. They had said the things that needed to be said. They had expressed their love, their regrets, their hopes for what would come after. And now, as they neared the end, they found solace in the fact that they had truly lived together, fully and deeply. One crisp October morning, Michael asked Sarah to take him outside. He wanted to feel the sun on his face, to breathe the fresh air one last time. She bundled him in blankets and wheeled him into the garden. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the leaves rustled gently in the breeze. It was a perfect day, one that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. "Look at that," Michael said, gazing up at the sky. "It's as if the world knows." Sarah sat beside him, her heart heavy with the weight of what was coming, but also lightened by the love that filled the air around them. She held his hand, and they sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the world, birds chirping, leaves crunching, the distant hum of life moving on, even as their time together was slowing to a close. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Michael turned to Sarah. His breathing was shallow now, and his strength was fading. But his eyes, those same eyes she had fallen in love with all those years ago, were still full of love. "I'm ready," he whispered. Sarah nodded, though her heart ached. She leaned in close, pressing her forehead to his. "I love you," she whispered back. "I always will." "I love you too," Michael said, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for everything." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's presence. And as the light of the day faded, so too did Michael. His breathing slowed, and with one final peaceful exhale, he was gone. Sarah sat there holding him, tears streaming down her face. But as the sadness washed over her, so did a profound sense of peace. They had made the most of their time. They had shared their love, their memories, their final goodbye. And though the pain of losing him was sharp, the love they had shared was stronger. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself returning to the garden, to the place where they had shared their last moments together. The world continued on as it always does, but she carried Michael with her, in her heart, in the memories they had created, and in the peace they had found in each other's love. It was in the end a beautiful goodbye. Yet, despite the emptiness, Sarah felt a deep gratitude. As she sat in the garden, the place where Michael had said his last goodbye, she realized that their love, the moments they had shared, would never truly leave her. It was woven into the fabric of her life, and even though Michael was no longer physically present, the essence of their bond remained. That love would be her guide as she moved forward, step by step, into a future without him. In the silence of the garden, she whispered, "Goodbye, my love." But deep down she knew, this was not an ending, but a continuation of their journey in a new and quieter way. Several months later, Sarah found herself smiling again, though faintly. She had begun to embrace life slowly, taking small steps forward. She planted new flowers in the garden, not to replace the old ones but to honor Michael's love for nature. Each bloom felt like a new memory she was creating, one that acknowledged the past but also welcomed the future. As the seasons changed, so did Sarah, learning to carry Michael with her, not as a shadow of grief, but as a light that guided her toward her own healing.